really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to share what I do and how I integrate SDG 16 into a new course that was developed last year. And so basically today I'd like to start with, I'll start about sharing a little bit more about myself and what I do, and then the topics of access to justice and legal empowerment, and then the details of the actual course and the different partners that were very important part for the course success. And so happy to be here today, and I would ask participants that, we're going to have ample time for questions at the end. I also have one exercise for you. So if you just have pen and paper, with you, you will be needing that at a later point in the presentation. And so I'll begin. Okay. So first of all, you haven't introduced me. So I've been here at Penn State since September 2019. And my background is in law and education. So I'm a professor of practice, given that really I don't have your typical academic career. I've been a practitioner for most of my life. So my area is intellectual property and technology transfer law. And so prior to joining Penn State, I was assistant counsel at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, assisting in these topics. But I've been always very passionate about education. And of course, within the topic of tech transfer, I always felt there was an opportunity to bridge these disciplines together. And so when there was the opportunity to lead the Law, Policy, and Engineering Initiative, that was very attractive to me. I have this map here. I am from Colombia. I love to travel, and these are all countries where I've lived. And so that's just a little bit about myself. So Law, Policy, and Engineering is a collaborative effort between College of Engineering, Penn State Law, and the School of International Affairs. And this initiative is quite unique. A lot of people ask me, why is it an initiative? Why isn't it called an institute or center? So the initiative has two main goals. One is research, to foster more interdisciplinary research across these disciplines. But another is to create new curriculum initiatives that bridge these disciplines to the curriculum. And this is the reason why it's called an initiative, and it's actually housed within the School of Engineering, Design, Technology, and Professional Programs. So these past 2 years, our first push was to develop, design and develop a new Master of Engineering degree in Engineering Law and Policy. We referred to that as MELP. And I work with a group of 14 faculty across all 3 academic units in this program design, and we're excited that it will be launching this fall, 2022. But basically the initiative seeks to highlight and bring faculty together around topics that require an interdisciplinary approach. So some of the pictures you see here are from events we've created, everything from election security to nuclear policy to big tech. And so it's exciting to be in that environment and to be able to come up with new innovative ways of how do we foster this interdisciplinary collaboration. I also want to mention that LPE does have more than 20 affiliated faculty across 5 different colleges. So it is not exclusive to engineering, international affairs, and law. We do welcome faculty across all campuses, and there's opportunities to do so. I did found my lab, which is called Design, Justice, and Sustainable Development. And what I seek to do is really to use the human-centered approach to be able to come up with innovative solutions of tackling some of the challenges found with SDG 16. And so within this framework of the lab, I decided to create the Engineering 497 Design for Justice course. And it's been a perfect platform to bring some of these ideas into an offering for students and get their feedback. But at the same time, directly link that to the SDGs and provide that context for students. So I will be talking about my course in more detail, but first I want to provide some context on access to justice and legal empowerment so that we all understand the context in which this is being proposed. So the reality is that when we think about access to justice, a lot of different ideas and concepts come to mind to different people. A lot of people think first of criminal justice. Of course, the justice topic has been on everyone's mind this past few years, especially. But then also how that's linked to diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. So I'm going to dive into a little bit more detail about this. So of course, we have 17 SDGs, and SDG 16 promotes peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. And as we all know, within the SDGs, then we have a set of targets, and in particular, target 16.3 mentions the need to promote the rule of law at the national and international levels and ensure equal access to justice for all. So in regard to that equal access, that's where that in my course comes in my particular interest. So the World Justice Project established 4 universal principles for the rule of law: accountability, just laws, open government, and accessible and impartial dispute resolution. And the World Justice Project also has a rule of law index. And so countries are evaluated based on certain criteria, which I will explain. And as we can see, this is a global issue. When we think about rule of law, we have to think about January 6th and what happened here in the United States. And so, I would say there's always a risk when you think about justice and how important it is to be able to protect and to guarantee those rights to all people. So the United States is actually ranked at number 21 within this list. And you can see the colors from green to yellow, kind of how, and red, how they've been ranked. And this is for 2020, which was the last time that this was done. Now, in order to be able to be part of this rank, they are evaluated based on these 8 factors. So constraints on government powers, absence of corruption, open government, fundamental rights, order and security, regulatory enforcement, civil justice, and criminal justice. And so all these factors go into that rank. And for what we're going to be hearing today and what I apply in my course, we actually work on the topic of civil justice. And so within the rank, it actually is country specific. And for United States, they actually show for each of those categories where we stand, right? Civil justice, we're 36 out of 128 in the global rank. And if we look at criminal justice, we're 22 over 128. And so, of course, these are issues that when you look at the rank affect some countries more than others, especially those that are developing or that don't have those strong institutions in place. You'll see that they're directly affected. But I want to bring forth the topic of civil justice because a lot of individuals don't really know exactly what we refer to. And so really the reality is that everyone at some point in their lives are going to be faced with legal problems. And most of these are related to employment, housing, education, health, and family. And most of those issues, that eviction, foreclosure, divorce, child custody, bankruptcy, right, fraud, abuse, all fall within the civil justice context. And there was a survey made in 2019 to 100,000 people, 101 countries. And these are some of the statistics that came from that, which are really interesting. And it's like 1 out of 3 people don't even understand that their problem has a legal nature. 29% don't seek any type of advice. And 1 in 6 say it's nearly impossible to find the money required to solve their problems. And I'd like to highlight this because one of the big differences, what we call about access to justice and the civil justice and criminal justice system, is that in the criminal justice system, there's a mandate that you will, if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. In civil justice, that's not the case. So the reality is that there is a lot of individuals that can't afford to get legal counsel and don't know what the process is like. And because of that lack of access, they actually end up with really bad decisions that affect their families. And eviction is one example of those. And so with COVID this past year, a lot of you might have seen through the news that eviction really has become a big problem in our nation and globally too. And the reason is, of course, in addition to the health and loss that people have suffered, a lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of people can't pay rent, and therefore that's where eviction comes into play. And so a lot of people were at risk of being removed from their homes or have been removed. Now, there were certain mandates put in place to avoid an eviction crisis where they were basically freezing and suspending evictions from happening from certain time. But all those measures are temporary. Those measures doesn't mean that those individuals don't owe those amounts. They still have to pay. So it is an issue that we're going to continue seeing in the upcoming years, and that has not been resolved. Now, when we talk about access to justice, we can't forget rural America. Also a sector that really has issues in this space because they become isolated. And so this article actually, highlights some of this. This is in Minnesota. But really the geographical distance, right? Lack of technology, lack sometimes of even broadband access, right? To be able to connect remotely are all aspects that affect access to justice in these space. And so now I'm going to switch gears to talk a little bit about legal empowerment and why is this important and how I bridge those elements into the course I created. So the UN Commission established that there's 4 pillars for legal empowerment: access to justice and the rule of law, property rights, labor rights, and business rights. And why is legal empowerment so important? Well, because it's really important to be able to ensure that there's protection and opportunity for everyone, that those that are poor and don't have the resources are not, actually being in positions where they can't defend themselves, either because of lack of knowledge, resources, or access in general. But also just ensuring that there's equal opportunity. So really this topic of access to justice is a crisis of exclusion and income inequality, because there is a gap that's seen between the effects of those that have the resources versus those that don't. And so this makes us really there's a need to be proactive in order to be able to come up with innovative solutions as to how we can help close this access to justice gap and how we can empower individuals. And so that's where my course comes into play. So seeking to bridge some of those elements from law, policy, and engineering, which is to expose students, 1, to real world problems, 2nd, to create an interdisciplinary environment where students can be actually face-to-face and in touch with students across the disciplines, but also be able to reflect on how they can apply their knowledge, their expertise to tackle some of these problems. So with this in mind, I actually taught the course spring 2021 as Engineering 897, and then on fall as Engineering 497. During the summer, made some changes to the course, and most of what I will explain will reference what we did during the fall of 2021. And one of the key elements for the success of this course was the partnerships that had to be in place. So there's a lot of text here, but of course, the course objectives did seek to expose students to design thinking, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, particularly 16, access to civil justice, legal design, visual law, and open policy making. To reflect on how the aspects of technology and human-centered design can provide greater empathy, access, and efficiency to legal processes and the legal system, and transparency. And of course, all this to create more understanding for the vulnerable populations that are mostly affected. But at the same time, to become familiar with how technology is impacting the field, and also how to be innovative and really look and in this case, for fall 2021, the technology that was being explored was virtual reality, to be able to see how virtual reality could be used to close the access to justice gap. And so partnerships, as I mentioned, are very important. And so I like to mention what these were. So first of all, I partnered with Penn State Law with both their Veterans and Service Members Legal Clinic, which is led by Michelle Bulmer. She's also the Associate Dean for Clinics and Experiential Learning there. And Susan Bordeaux from the Director of the Family Law Clinic. And so I had worked with Michelle during the spring, and then during the fall, we brought along also the Family Law Clinic. And basically, they were our test beds, right? These are legal clinics that provide services to individuals that usually cannot afford attorneys, and in two different matters, right? And so this was a great way to have students understand better what legal clinics do, but also the populations they serve, and do it right here at Penn State. Also within the academic aspect, I was awarded in spring 2021 the opportunity to participate in Leonard Center's Emmett Academy. This is called Entrepreneurial Mindset for Innovating Teaching. And so basically during the summer, I worked with certain methodology to apply to the course. And so the idea of this academy is really to bring concepts of an entrepreneurial mindset, like customer discovery and other concepts, into the classroom. And that was done within a cohort of faculty from engineering. And so it was really interesting to also share best practices and learn what others are doing to innovate in their classroom. And on the technology side, of course, first of all, I had the opportunity to be awarded a Faculty Engagement Award. So these are awards that are provided by Penn State's Teaching and Learning with Technology Office. And in 2021, the technology they were working with was 360 video. And so I also was supported by their team as to how to integrate 360 to the classroom, was provided a camera, support, and so for any faculty that's interested in exploring the use of technology, that's a great resource here on campus as well. And of course, really what was a turning point in all this was also the help of Utopian. So Utopian is a company that provides custom AI, VR, and XR innovation. And their co-CEO, Lisa Sibilia, who's in the picture, is a Penn State alum. And during the summer, I happened to meet her. I told her what I was doing. She got really excited, and they sponsored actually the use of all the VR equipment so that all students had a VR headset. and also equipment for the legal clinic. And actually, she was present for most of the course, supporting and her team supporting the development of the digital assets on virtual reality. As you can imagine, 15 weeks is not a long time. And so for a project-based course, not all students come with the expertise of how to develop or how to manage these softwares for virtual reality. So our course centered a lot on the design concept, and then her team actually brought that to life. So that was a key aspect of the course. And so, as I mentioned, what we did for this course was really bridge the concept of design, technology, and law. And this was inspired by Margaret Hagan at Stanford. So there is a discipline, a discipline called law by design, where the idea is, law is really not written for the common people, right? Law is written for lawyers. Even lawyers have difficulty sometimes reading law. And so the question is, how do we promote greater access? And that's where aspects of legal design, visual law become so important, where the idea is there's processes that individuals need to go through, that where they need to go to court, where they need to, be able to state their story and what happened. But a lot of times they don't know what they are, or if there is a resource, it's highly complex and they don't understand it. So in this field, there's a lot of individuals currently looking at visual contracts, for example, and other aspects of how to make law more accessible. So I definitely wanted to bring that aspect to the course. We also use design thinking as really the methodology to carry out the course. We wanted to make sure that students understood who the end users, who the customers of the legal clinics were, that they could have empathy and then define, what is the problem that they can solve with virtual reality, be able to ideate solutions, create a prototype, in this case with the help of Utopian, and then of course test this. And so this is the framework that was followed. Now during the course, most of the course was actually virtual, so it was a hybrid format, and I had done it completely virtual in the spring and then hybrid in the fall. And it was an opportunity to continue using some of those online tools. So I did use the Miro board quite a lot, and had students interacting. In this case, this is a picture of from IDEO's human-centered design mindset. So when you talk about empathy, embrace ambiguity, to iterate, learn from failure, creative confidence, make it, be optimistic, and how does that apply to what we were trying to do with the legal clinics. And so as part of this course, the first 2 weeks are very intensive because of course, it's providing the content of what access to justice is. And usually, since it was a 497 course, also I had students that were undergrads, others that were master's degrees, PhD students. And so it's kind of a leveling as well. But that interdisciplinarity, I had students across all engineering disciplines. So it was really interesting dynamic, and it definitely, each cohort creates a different dynamic. So the spring cohort was very different than the fall cohort. But it was an opportunity to bring forth, as we talk about legal empowerment and access to justice, as I mentioned, the SDGs, both 16, 8, and of course 1. If you think about the impact that it has and the need to really create more access to justice and legal empowerment so individuals can really thrive. And so this was an aspect that was continually brought into the course. Now, excuse me. So Utopian, as I mentioned, was the one providing some of the technical support. And so very early on, we shared with the students what were the parameters for the prototype that we're going to create. And so it was determined that we had two teams in the classroom, that each team was going to create one scene in VR, and that they could integrate 360 video if they wanted to. And so it could be a combination of both things. Also, the scene that they created would have a number of assets, and those assets could be 2D, like images or links to video, or 3D assets. And so these are actually figures created from scratch that are 3D. And so Utopian would be building these on the platform. And they were limited to 3 of those. And of course, they would develop a presentation at the end, and that was the deliverable. But in order to do this, the students didn't work on their own. They work hand in hand with the legal, with the students from the legal clinic. And so one of the things that we had to do early on was establish a schedule. And this was actually discussed with each legal clinic director prior to starting the course. And it does involve a commitment of their time, but it was 5 different dates in which there would be some sort of interaction. And in particular, 2 workshops where students would be working together. So this is just the layout of kind of what that schedule looked like last fall. And it was great to see, first of all, both for the engineering students and the law students, virtual reality was completely foreign. There was only 1 student who had engaged with virtual reality through gaming, but the rest, no one had experienced VR. So it was an incredible opportunity for students to learn more about this technology and to really, foster the environment of them thinking, how could this be applied in this other context? But in order to understand that application, of course, you need to understand what are the issues at hand. And so first couple of weeks was of sharing that with them, but really the impactful thing for most students was hearing that directly from the legal clinics. And then eventually, in the case of the Veterans and Service Members Legal Clinic, meeting some of the veterans and getting their direct input. And so in order to develop a VR scene, right, it's really about the messaging, the storytelling. What is it that you want to convey with that scene? And who your end user is, right? Who will be using that scene? So we went with the whole series of exercise with the students for them to be able to think about this. And, we brought forth a lot of exercises of them reflecting, right? The who, the what, the how, and doing this on their own, but also doing this then with the law students. We had a brainstorming session in the legal clinics. We actually took the students there. Their legal clinics are, both of these are at the Innovation Park. So we took the students there, we had the workshop there, and it was an incredible interaction. On one hand, understanding what is it that we want to build and do, and on the other hand, just training them on how to use VR. In addition, we did bring VR to the classroom in the sense of using it as a collaborative platform. So actually, the first time the students met, they met in virtual reality. They were able to give each other high fives, and it was really an incredible opportunity to also kind of see some of those reactions of experiencing VR. And it was important to experience that, because how can they create something if they don't know the how it feels and also the potential of what can be done with it. And so, as I mentioned, storytelling was an important component. Of course, when we're working on virtual reality, then we have to think about a 360-degree context and also just human behavior, right? As you go into a scene, what is the field of view? What do you need to create to be intentional to make someone turn left or right or approach something? So all these were aspects that were experienced. Okay. But at the same time, for the law students, we needed them to also have a visual mindset. And so we also encouraged them to think about from their perspectives, the legal clinic, and how would they visually convey that so that other people could understand, feel empathy, but also be inspired. And so we had them develop a couple of slides with pictures in this exercise. And so as you can see, these are all from the Family Law Clinic. And this was a way also of the engineering students understanding what they do, right? The breadth of different topics that are covered, and the type of legal issues that are addressed, everything from victims of domestic abuse, but also adoption, divorce, custody, and other. And we did the same thing with the Veterans and Service Members Legal Clinic. And so, of course, these were the images that they shared and provided as to the type of legal services they provide. A lot of disability claims, legal medical claims. At the legal clinic in particular, they do a lot of appeals. So veteran services, as you're aware, the government has a lot of offices and support. However, the claim process can actually be complex in the sense of if you don't indicate all the information and be able, especially the medical information in case there was any type of disability or medical impact, then that really affects, right, your benefits. And so they deal a lot with these issues, but also other types of issues. And of course, it was interesting to see how also they provided the slides based on the client's experience of the legal process. And so, of course, mental health is a big one. But usually it's just the level of complexity, right? These processes are long. There's claims that are denied, and a lot of times veterans don't know, what to do next. And so definitely the service that is provided here at Penn State is really incredible, both at the Veterans and Service Members Legal Clinic, but also at the Family Law Clinic. And so going back to visual and our reality of evictions, this with our COVID reality, it was bringing that to the students, right? These are images from newspapers taken and some digital images and making them reflect, right? What they felt, right? When they saw the images, also what they believe was being conveyed, how it made you feel. And all these aspects were important because they needed to think the same way as they were thinking about creating a virtual scene for the legal clinic. And so here I want to make a quick pause. And so this is actually one of the exercises that I did with the students, right? It was more of a discussion. They had to validate the VRC, discuss it, think about their 2D assets and 3D assets. Also think about the legal content. So as they thought about a virtual scene, since it was to solve a legal issue, right? That expertise they didn't have, the law students had. So how they're communicating with the law students. The course really was about empowering them. They had to be reaching out, and really the working dynamic that was created was great. And that was one of the things they highlighted the most was, first of all, being aware that all these issues taking place and really the difficulties with access for so many people. But at the same time, also starting to think, okay, how can technology impact or make a difference? And so in this exercise, of course, we asked them to, really bring forth the aspect of empathy as they were developing their VRC. So what I'd like to do now is, just pause here for a second and actually, ask each of you, if you have your paper and your pencil, just to stop for a second, and within your own course or activity where you're seeking to integrate the SDGs, right? How can a visual component of that make a difference, right? And maybe just based on what you've heard today, what has any of this inspired you to think about an activity or an exercise that you may want to implement in the classroom? And I'd like to highlight, of course, that visual aspect that sometimes we take for granted sometimes in our exercise, where we're used to just using a lot of words. So I want to give you 5 minutes and ask each of you just to think about this applicable to your own course. And then, we can have a brief discussion on that before continuing with the presentation. So are there any questions at this point? No? Okay, so I'm gonna give you 5 minutes. Ask everyone just pen and paper to write those down. And I'll put here the clock just for 5 minutes and give you a little bit of a break as well. Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
I'm really enjoying your talk. It's actually connecting a lot of dots for me, because I am teaching VR as part of my museum PR course. I teach for the Department of Art History, and last semester, part of their assignment was to create a virtual exhibition space using 360 video or VR technology. How much of a learning curve, there is with all of this, I think has been part of my challenge. But the other is that ways to roll EDI into my curriculum foundation, and maybe the museum as being a space that has been historically inequitable. Maybe this is a way to talk about that as well for me. And so maybe there's a way to roll in the kind of experience of a museum kind of grounded on those terms.
Yeah, that's first of all really exciting to hear that you're working with VR too, and I definitely think that the possibilities of being intentional about bringing some of these topics, but also the access that it can give, even though maybe not everyone can have a headset at this point. VR can be viewed via an iPad or phone. And so definitely I feel that access is an aspect that you can definitely target and explore and be intentional about. And then even for your own students that are going through this exercise of thinking about that proactively. So yeah, it's exciting to hear that. Anybody else want to share their thoughts during this break? Maybe what they're working on their own courses?
I can jump in if that's okay.
Yes,
In art history, since I'm sort of constantly teaching with images, I was thinking about the sorts of images that I don't use and how those could improve my teaching. And I think something that would help me to kind of break through to a lot of my students in the hard sciences, for example, and students in business would be to use not necessarily VR, but more sort of charts and graphics and statistical analyses. I've been seeing a number of really amazing presentations on sort of illustrating networks as well, and looking at the interconnectivity of resources that would go into the production of a single work of art. Say, right now I'm teaching my honors students about the ancient Near East. So we're looking at things like the objects from the royal tombs at Ur, and the gold and the silver and the lapis and the carnelian are all coming from the mountains far away from the floodplain of Mesopotamia, and so they're all expensive, and I try and use Google Maps to kind of illustrate that, but I think that would be a place I would sort of take things, is thinking in terms of resources and acquisition and supply chain and things like that, to kind of bring that in.
Yes, I think there's an incredible opportunity there. I think, when you think about infographics, right, and the conceptual effort it requires for a student to kind of take certain information and put it in an infographic form, or help map up concepts, right? So I think definitely that the visual aspect, a lot of times it's underutilized, right? So that definitely seems like something that sounds that you can implement more. So I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about that. Anybody else want to share their thoughts during the activity?
I would like to. I don't teach, but I facilitate classes, collaborating with community partners, just like you work with the legal clinic and so on. And I was actually serendipitously this morning looking at videos for a presentation to a national group that does work like I do, engage scholarship facilitation, to tell them about the SDGs, right? And there is such a proliferation about the Sustainable Development Goals. There are videos ranging all the way from doomsday to really cutesy. And what I was thinking, it might be really interesting for my group, because we are coming from all over really the world. This is an international group that I'm working with. This might be a good exercise using visual elements to reflect on what specific SDGs mean to us. I mean, water issues look different here from, let's say, I have a partner in Ghana, Africa, right? Or even between the East and the West Coast, and so on. And I thought the visual tweaks those differences, or makes those differences way more visible, right, than we can do with these very generalized, things that are out there. Anyways, it's really interesting. I love your, transdisciplinary approach.
Thank you. And I think visual, definitely, I mean, in what you're proposing, I think it'd be so impactful also because there's so much that we learn from each other when something visual is shared, sometimes more than words, right? Because, and so I think that definitely the SDGs provide that space where people are impacted differently, and even what SDGs come into their mind vary, right, based on their reality and their context, and the priorities they might have or needs as to how to address these. One of the things that really inspired me also about SDG 16 is that I kept seeing that anytime we bring forth SDGs, the only aspect that students would bring was environmental, right? Climate change, environmental, and there's 17 SDGs, right? And there's so much more. And of course, that's a very important one, but also gender equality and others. And so this was definitely an opportunity for them to see how the SDGs are embedded in everything you do, right? And how even a field like legal services that may not come to mind when you think about SDGs is a perfect platform because we have SDG 16. And so it's a way to tie things together. So yeah, it's exciting to hear about what you're thinking and how different individuals from different countries could contribute visually to that, this for Q&A. So what I want to do now is continue with the course and actually show you what the students developed, right? And that way you kind of see how the course wrapped up itself. So as I mentioned, students worked using the design thinking process. So this was one of the early prototypes where they did thinking about their scene and just sketching out, right? In this case, 3 phases of the veteran's life. Then here we have a 3D prototype. So we had students think about this also because in virtual reality, you have to take into account the space and be intentional about where things are located and where you want the user to go and to approach. And so this is some of the 3D prototypes being built as they were thinking about their scene. And of course, also, since the development was being made by Utopian, by the industry partner, they provided some visuals of what they had in mind that they wanted certain things to look like. So all these aspects that you've seen, the last 3 pictures have been from the team that was working with the Veterans and Service Members Legal Clinic. And so these were some of the pictures that they provided for the virtual reality scene. And so I want to share with you the video that we created. So each team had to create their own video, 7 minutes long. And they actually presented that to the legal clinics, to an expert panel that we had. And what we did in this video was kind of create a summary of the course and bring forth some of that that was developed in a single video. So that's what I want to share with you right now.
So hello everyone, I'm Sandra Allain. I'm the professor of the Design for Justice course. I am the director of the Law, Policy and Engineering Initiative, and here today we're in this amazing space, which is this collaborative virtual space that with the help of Utopian has been created for the Design for Justice course. So with the students this semester, we got the chance to work in this environment, to brainstorm, to collaborate using the different tools, but also how can we innovate in favor of those that have less resources, who can access VR and how can they be accessed? What happens if I don't have a headset? And really with the students, you know, these were constant discussions we had, but also knowing that, you know, individuals can access VR through their tablet, through a phone. So a headset is not always required.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And the collaboration and partnership has been unbelievable. I think the cross-pollination of intelligence is a significant opportunity for stakeholders, be it law students, be it engineers, to think differently and to really open up the creative envelope of what's possible. And without further ado, let's have the students take it away from here.
Let's go.
We're really excited to be able to help the Family Law Clinic's clients feel more comfortable and prepared for their legal process.
We're also very excited to help the Family Law Clinic better serve their clients' needs.
Can't wait to show you all the work that we've done this past semester.
Welcome to our intake empowerment space. As you'll see behind me, we have our designated intake empowerment video, which will help prepare incoming clients for the intake process. Also, the space is set up with beautiful images of nature and a fish tank with lovely fish tank sounds and a calming environment that's quite spacious to help clients feel very relaxed. So we hope that this all makes the client feel very relaxed, comfortable, and prepared to handle their business with the legal clinic. Thank you.
I've been working with the Family Law Clinic, and we kind of came up with a 3-part solution for them. So the part that I'm going to be speaking to you about is the 360 video that we took of the Center County Courthouse. Behind me, you can see that this is just a still image. An attorney from the legal clinic come and explain all of the areas of the courtroom as they're going through the video. So the person would understand who sits in the gallery, which part is the gallery, where the jury sits, how everything functions.
You'll see in the back of the courtroom are the gallery doors. That's where you'll walk in for the hearing. And you'll walk past multiple benches. This is where family, witnesses, and other support might sit during your hearing. And if you walk towards the front, you'll see the jury area on the left. There's 14 jury chairs. If you have a jury trial, members of the jury would sit here.
As you've just seen in the previous 360 video of the courtroom, we now have a courtroom where you can come in as a client and you can, this is a more standardized courtroom, not exactly the same one you've seen in the video, but this is definitely a place where you can get some more hands-on experience with the courtroom. You can get a more interactive experience with the courtroom. You have all the same things that you've seen in the previous video that were tagged. And also you have, in this space, you can have multiple people join you. So if you look around the room, you can see that there's multiple people with me right now and they're sitting in different spaces. And this is just an extra space where a client can come in and get more acclimated with maybe their designated legal intern.
I have been working with the Veterans Legal Clinic to develop this VR scene. So the Veteran Legal Clinic can use it to help their clients who are the veterans to educate them about the initial claim for the disability or compensation claim. As you can see here in the picture behind me, it shows like the whole process for filing an initial disability compensation claim in a simple way.
This scene here with the fireplace and the seating is supposed to display an intimate setting for veterans to come, talk about their feelings, their experiences, anything that, comes to mind. You want to give a open, safe, and inclusive space for them.
I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next and everything I have to teach them. And I'm trying to read their body language, but I feel like this would give me a better read on that.
I was quite skeptical that this would have a useful application in the family law clinic. But as we've progressed through the time with the engineering students and have been able to utilize the virtual reality tool, myself and my students, and we've been able to see the spaces that have been created, I am much more optimistic that this is going to be a useful tool for our clients.